You are muted.
Yes, today is November the 4th, 2024, election eve here in the United States. And that's what stimulated me to want to do our topic today, which is on polarization. Nothing like an election to bring out the best in us and maybe the worst in us. And so we'll talk a little bit about polarization, but mostly we'll be looking at polarization through the lens of self-assessment. Many of you have been here for 35 or 36 weeks now, and we've been exploring the Pathways to Liberation matrix of self-assessment. Last week, we completed the 28th skill. And so today, you'll get a chance to kind of assess yourself and come up with a practice to support yourself going in this post-election season and the upcoming holiday season that happens towards the end of the year in so many places in the world. Jori sends her greetings. She's just not quite up to sitting up and having a call today. She's resting upstairs. We've been adopted by the cat that lives next door. And so the cat is comes and visits us every day. His name is Mo, and Mo is giving Jori some company and some purrs. So Happy Ron is here, and Ron's gonna get us started with a song on this to get us thinking about this theme. So Ron, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you so much. I wrote this song. I was inspired by Braver Angels, which is an organization that tries to work towards depolarization in this country and around the world, and try to reduce some of the toxicity that goes on. It's not easy to be free, that's how it should be. We argue over what we believe, but we're not gonna solve everything right here. We need to agree to disagree. I might prefer to stand and you might want to sit. We all do things a little differently. I'm glad that we are free to disagree. Sometimes people don't agree, it seems alright to me. Why do we have to be mean? But I won't call you weak if you don't call me freak. I'll listen to you if you listen to me. I might be headed left, you might be headed right. We all do things a little differently. I'm glad that we are free to disagree. I've been to many places that spoke with just one voice, but when I looked into their faces, I saw they had no choice, and I knew we need many viewpoints. I like what's in the center, you like what's on the side. We all do things a little differently. I'm glad that we are free to disagree. It's not easy to be free, that's how it should be. We argue over what we believe, but we're not gonna solve anything right here. We need to agree to disagree. We need to agree to disagree.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I'm gonna put those words into the chat. I screwed up just a little bit. Like to just let you hang out with them for a few minutes. And before we go to small groups, I want you to sing it a second time, Ron. So just let people hang out with the lyrics, read through them from themselves for a second. Okay. If you're willing, Ron, I'd love for you to just play it one more time for us, and then we'll go to small groups and talk about what comes up for us about this tune.
It's not easy to be free, and that's how it should be. We argue over what we believe. We're not gonna solve everything right here. We need to agree to disagree. I might prefer to stand and you might want to sit. We all do things a little differently. I'm glad that we are free to disagree. Sometimes people don't agree. Seems alright to me. Why do we have to be mean? I won't call you weak. Please don't call me freak. I'll listen to you if you listen to me. I might be headed left, you might be headed right. We all do things a little differently. I'm glad that we are free to disagree. I've been to many places that spoke with just one voice, but when I looked into their faces, I saw they had no choice, and I knew we need many viewpoints. I like what's in the center, you like what's on the side. We all do things a little differently. I'm glad that we are free to disagree. It's not easy to be free, that's how it should be. We argue over what we believe. We're not gonna solve everything right here. We need to agree to disagree. We need to agree to disagree. Boring. You're muted, Jim.
Thank you, Ron. And just notice how your body responds to the song, to the lyrics, to the music, to the meaning for you. And whatever you notice in terms of your feelings, just allow those feelings to be there. No such thing as a right feeling or a wrong feeling. And see if you can connect your feelings to your needs. What's important to you as you consider the meaning of the song? Then consider from in this moment, what might make your life more wonderful? What requests do you have of yourself as you get ready to go to a small group and connect with friends? So while you're in the small group, I suggest that you first remember the intention to connect, that this is an opportunity to live the meaning of that song, to just be present for someone who may have a different experience than you. And connect to what's alive in you and what's alive in them as you listen. And to do the best you can to stay present as you listen to one another. And take turns. The small group will be 15 minutes long. most of the groups will have 3 people in them. And so this is a chance for each of you to be heard and for about 5 minutes and to practice empathy for about 10. And the best thing probably for this first breakout room is to just listen in silent empathy unless there's a request by the speaker. Just take a moment for yourself now and do like a mini version of that self-connection exercise. Some of you might have been right in the middle of a sentence when the breakout room ended. Or maybe you're so relieved it's over. Or maybe you're frustrated that it's over because you didn't get to say everything you wanted to say or hear everything you wanted to hear. Whatever your experience is, make room for it in your heart. Okay, let's love to hear from a few people. I have 2 questions for you. First, any response that you'd like to share to the breakout room or the song? Any feedback or how it moved you or whatever is alive in you. So if you'd like to raise your electronic hand, there's a little button on the bottom of the screen, like Pallavi just showed us how to push. Go ahead, Pallavi.
I just wanted to thank Ron, right, who sang the song. I'm sorry, I forget the name. Thank
That's
you,
right.
Ron. It was such a beautiful song, and I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it too, Ron. Ron wrote to me when he saw the topic for the week, and he said, I've got a song for this. Can I sing it today? And I said, oh yes, that sounds wonderful. So I'm really glad you took the initiative and made a request. I love it when
And
people
and
ask.
then there's something about this song, I think. One is you can just keep talking and we can discuss about it. But somehow the song and the tune just reaches me, at least I can say about myself, reaches me in a very different, soft way. And I really enjoy that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Barbara?
Yes, thank you, Ron. The feeling for me was that it brought down the stress level, hearing your song. And I loved the rhythm also. And right at the end, there was a really nice insight that we were reminded by one of our group that we can either be drawn in to the media or we have a choice to focus our minds on what we think is important. And that was a real aha moment for me because that tells me I have a choice of how I'm going to focus my mind instead of being a passive victim in what somebody outside of me is choosing for me to focus on. Thank you.
Yeah, that sense of choice and self-empowerment is so vital for us to navigate these times, especially in the age of algorithms when social media wants to do our thinking for us. It's really important for us to think for ourselves. Thank you. Someone else, please. Anybody else like to be heard? Yeah, Pooja.
The song landed really nicely. I felt some relief when I heard the song. And then after the song ended, I've been sitting with a question that it's really sweet to like hear each other and disagree. But then if we have to move forward, then what do we do? And if we have to move forward together? So I've been sitting with that question and that's pricking me a little. But I did feel a lot of relief when I heard the song.
That's a wonderful, wonderful question. Yeah. So now that we've agreed to disagree, now what? What next steps can we take to sustain this sense of connection that we have and move forward to make life more wonderful? Wow, thank you. Somebody else, please.
And share.
Please.
And this is something that you know, but I feel called to share again, which is I'm originally from Brazil, and from 1964 to 1984, my country had dictatorship, which meant as a citizen, you were not supposed to disagree. And I just want to appreciate that there are places in which people can agree to disagree, and that there are places that you get punished harshly from disagreeing. So.
Yeah, what a miracle democracy is and freedom is compared to some places in the world where it's very difficult to find your public voice. You might still have your private voice, but to be able to express publicly the way we can in the United States and in other democratic places, that's a real gift. And it comes fraught with problems because sometimes people say things that are really outside the edge of our own range of tolerance, perhaps, but it's worth it to me.
Yeah.
Thank you. I remember being in school, maybe as young as the 3rd grade, and how the teacher would invite us to share our opinion and to, maybe it was a social studies question at a 3rd grade level. And how it was okay. She never made anybody wrong, even though I grew up in a pretty pretty strict, by some standards, area in the southern part of the United States. There was still a sense of spaciousness about disagreement that really, I think, influenced me through my life. Sherry.
Yeah. Hi, Jim. Hi, all. I am in China. So I celebrate for recently, as I heard from states, either from mindfulness body or from NVC partners, they quite often talk about states election. I start to realize I have a habit. Of course, in China, individually, I only represent myself. I'm not actively at all engaged in political. So I realized, wow, it's a habit. That's why when the first reaction I heard from states people, I had doubting and also kind of like a numb in my body. My ears said, not interested. And then I look at in this polarization, in run your music, I see vividly in states, maybe people are more actively engaged. In China, me, Chinese, I am not actively engaged. Nothing wrong, nothing right. Maybe for states, that's why more painful, as there are a lot of attachment. Here, as a Chinese, when I chose to be away, there could cause also pain and disattachment, but nothing from heart with engaged. That's I saw right now. Of course, I know if I look at why I chose less actively in, as I trust the Chinese government. I know even sometimes they may make stupid but I think it's stupid. I don't think as a governor, they are stupid. So for me, when I chose my trust to them, I feel so grateful for here. We are living in peace and safe environment. Of course, it paid high cost, but that's it. So when I heard just now from our bodies, Carlos, I feel in my heart some parts with sorrow from states, and also some parts are grateful from China.
Yeah,
That's it.
mixed feelings, of course. Thank you, Sherry.
I complete.
Mesh.
So when you shared the class 3 experience, I realized that is something that is missing in Indian education system mostly, because you are not very encouraged to ask questions. It has been, we have been trying to change, but the joke is like, who has in Indian education system, who has the right to ask questions? And it is the exam setter, it is the book author, it is the teacher, but not the students. Students have the right to give answers, and the answers which is written in the textbook, because thinking is literally not much allowed. So just wanted to acknowledge that, and that has been very painful to me. I have been aware of it for like, let's say, 10 years now. And trying to bring in. But it was very encouraging to hear that in states, that's a spirit that is encouraged right from childhood, right in the classroom.
Thank you, Mesh. Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for the space. I'm noticing that when the topic of politics comes up, I can like disconnect my feelings and say like, oh, I don't really care where I live. My vote doesn't really matter. But then as I sit with a little bit longer, I get concerned that I'm sort of bypassing some feelings that are really in me and some fear. And another thing I notice is that I'm so well trained in domination like systems that being right really does matter deep inside. And I'm confused by what's going on inside of me. Like I'm not caring, but I could be caring, and I'm so used to caring and being right in the past that it's a new way of being for me, and I'm just kind of unsure about what I'm going through. So
yeah, I really appreciate that honesty and that self-reflection. I think that's such an important skill, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today, is some self-reflection about the issue of polarization on different levels. Maybe not necessarily at the political level, but maybe at the interpersonal level, or even sometimes we're at war with ourselves. We might be polarized with our own beliefs. And so we can look at different levels. Thank you. So that seems to clear the board from that round, unless you've been waiting to say something. This is your chance, but I do have one other question.
Can I ask a question, Jim?
Sure, Tanya.
When you just said the polarization can be with ourselves, could you clarify a bit what you mean by that? I didn't understand.
Yeah. So have you ever had a situation where you were stuck and in conflict with yourself about a particular dilemma that you faced? Should you do this or should you do that? And so sometimes that can become kind of a toxic space for ourselves, and we can and it can lead to some harmful patterns of self-harm and so forth. So I think I don't think it's all that common, but I do think it's possible. And so does that make sense? Does that match your experience?
Yes, it does very much. Thank you. It's offered me a lot of clarity.
Yeah. So the second question was last week we focused on social change or supporting holistic systems. And the homework assignment that probably many of us didn't do, because who wants to do homework? But the idea was that you would come up with one next step in moving forward in a social change issue that might be important to you. And I'm just curious if anybody did that. For me, the answer was doing this class and focusing on something that is really important to me right now. I'm really scared about political violence and the creep of authoritarianism throughout the world. I would like to support freedom and choice. And so I thought having an honest discussion about it and doing some self-reflection about it would be with you guys, with my friends, might be a powerful next step for me. And it's worked. Preparing for the class today, it's really given me some clarity and gotten me in touch with some resources. So I like the effect. So did anybody else come up with the next step that you'd be willing to share? Yeah, thank you, Tanya. You're still muted though.
Well, that wouldn't work. Well, maybe it would. So, I mean, I always have next steps. Okay, I'm just going to go right out and say, because this just happened a minute ago before I came onto this call. I've been in meetings all day long with people who are completely freaked out about the election. And so my next step was make a plan with my Black friends in Sacramento to get them out of the country and into Canada if things go really south.
So
that may not have been the kind of plan you were hoping to hear, but that
there's no right or wrong. It's like for you, it's a very personal plan. It's about really supporting some friends, and it sounds like it's in the service of protection.
Well, it's really in the service of pulling people off the ceiling that have been on the ceiling all week. It's just.
Yeah. Thank you.
I said, okay, here's the plan.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. And Sherry?
Referring to the action, homework. I take example for environmental protection. I know I still have slightly self-judgment, say, hey, you should do something great. Meantime, I am very grateful for daily I'm doing from myself, for using less plastic bag. Even people, the seller in the market, they already know my purpose. They respond to me. And I see it's a slightly small wave in the river. Second, I heard from people, they care their environment. I give from my heart empathetic listening. And third, when I heard from somebody, they are quite with strong voice calling for everybody should care about the environment. I send my metta. As I know the universe, the earth, give us all unconditional love. What I do is what I do today. That's it.
Thank you, Sherry. Anybody else want to share a next step? Maybe it's one you just now came up with. Had nothing to do with the homework, but you're inspired now to just say one thing that you're willing to do to move forward to make life more wonderful for yourself or others. River?
Yeah, so my partner's family see politics the opposite, as it seems to me, as I do. And in the past, I've started conversations with, help me understand how your choice is aligned with your values. And I've gotten feedback that that's a useful strategy. And at this stage of life, having lived over 70 years and being of all the advantages that I have of being a white educated male in the US, I'm surrendered that change seems slow. And so my previous inquiry asking, how does this choice of governor, in that case, now for president currently, how your choice matches your values, I'm curious about that. Help me understand. It comes from a different place. It's really about understanding now, and I want to model understanding and patience, because that's how it seems social change works for me. And modeling acceptance. I don't want to disengage. I don't want my reactivity that comes to mind, how horrified I am at some of the scenarios that comes in my mind. But I really want, in the Thanksgiving season that's coming, to maybe have dialogue that's different in retrospect. That really, I just want to understand in retrospect, not to avert something, not to make them change going forward, but I want to understand now and a little bit in the past. Something like that for me.
Beautiful. Thank you. I love your question. How does X align with your values? And Sophia has written in the chat, I think about the history and culture, the region where I was born and raised, and about the things that my country has done, and about the things that have motivated its citizens every day. I just watch, listen, and feel now. And I think about what kind of society I want to leave for future generations. I want to cherish small actions and small things that make a big difference. Thank you, Sophia. Anybody else before we move into a very brief lesson about polarization and then a self-assessment about it? Okay, so it's another transition. So mark the transition for yourself. This is another next step that we can always be taking, to notice these little transitions in our life from one thing to the next, and take a moment to connect, to recenter on the 0 step, our intention to connect, our attention in the present, our openness to outcome. And me get my slides ready to go here. So the topic today is polarization and nonviolent communication. And so the first part is just for you to do some self-reflection, maybe a little journaling. And so the first question is, what does this concept, polarization, mean to you? So I'll just be quiet for three and a half minutes while you consider the question and just jot the first thing that comes up for you about how you, if you were with somebody And they said, what is polarization? How would you define it? I know some folks are putting some answers in the chat. That's wonderful. Might stimulate some thinking for others. It's interesting, the answer that came to me as I was just sitting with the question was it's the opposite of the zero step. So the intention is everything but connection. The intention is about convincing or correcting. Attention is not on the present moment. It's about the past, what somebody has done in the past and how they might deserve to be punished or rewarded. It's about focusing on the future in terms of how they receive these punishments or rewards and so forth. And there's no openness to outcome. When I'm in a polarized space, I don't want to hear it. I just want my way. And so I'm the opposite of openness to outcome. So I realize that the zero step for me is my antidote. How do you experience polarization in your own life? Is the second question for a couple of minutes of reflection and writing. So how does it show up in your life? Well, for me, I realized that polarization shows up at least 3 levels. There's a systemic way I experience polarization, like when I watch media or choose not to watch some media, but prefer others, or I notice how the YouTube algorithm shovels what I want to hear towards me, and I have to actually seek different points of view when I'm brave enough to do so. And how I experience this systemic polarization in the form of violence and the threats of violence, political violence specifically. Relationally, I know how to argue and I know how to fight, and sometimes I get really dug in. During the height of the pandemic, I had some rip-roaring conflicts with dear friends about things where we just disagreed, and I wasn't very proud of how I utilized my NVC skills in those moments. It was a great opportunity for me to discover my edges. And also to celebrate some strengths occasionally, but relationally, often there were some real challenges for me. I tend to live in a relational bubble where I surround myself with people who tend to agree with me. And since the pandemic, I haven't had as much social interaction outside my circle as I would have liked. And then, of course, we already talked a little bit about how polarization can be experienced inside with a dilemma or a disagreement with oneself. So there's 2 games that Marshall says we can play. The polarity game is the game of who's right and who's wrong, what's good and what's bad. It's the source of the domination system, the domination paradigm. And the other game is, what can I do to make life more wonderful, which is the NVC game. And so if I want to do my part to start healing polarization within me, relationally and systemically, I think this is where it starts. To keep asking myself, what can I do to make life more wonderful? So let's do a quick practice to set ourselves up for the self-assessment. Think of a specific example of polarization that you directly experience in your life and write down the observation. Maybe it's at the level of a belief, a political belief, a religious belief. It could be strategic. You like it one way and the other person likes it the other way. Could be at the level of an enemy image. So write down a specific example of polarization. Then make space if you're done with that observation. You only need to write about 15 or 20 words. You don't need the whole story. How do you feel? What do you notice in your body? And make space to feel the feeling. There may be anger, rage, even a spiritual quality of rage, like an outrage. Could be mourning, depression, guilt, sadness. Whatever the feeling is, make space for it. You don't have to, you won't get stuck with the feeling. It'll shift as soon as we ask the next question. So just allow the feelings to be. Let the thoughts go. Allow the feelings to be. And then link the feelings to your needs. What's important to you? Here's one list of needs, not the list, but this might help you to connect to what's important to you. Someone asked about what spiritual rage might look like. I experienced it around my need for well-being. I feel outraged that we have abundant resources to make sure that not a single child goes hungry or a single person goes hungry, and yet we hoard those resources and so people do go hungry. And I feel a sense of outrage about that because my need for well-being matters. If one person goes to bed hungry tonight, I'm hungry. And it goes for all these other needs. When these needs are chronically unmet, I suffer. So as you connect to these needs, savor them. They're that's what makes you a human being. It defines us. We're not the only animals that have needs, but we seem to be the only animals that can connect conceptually, empathically, in the way that we human beings can do cognitively with these needs. Can talk about them. What a gift to savor these needs together. And once you're connected to the needs that are important to you, see what happens if you can empathize with the so-called other side. What's important to them? What needs do you imagine are motivating their beliefs or their behaviors, their strategies? You don't have to agree with them in order to empathize with them. So my intuition is telling me to change my plan a little bit and invite you to go back to small groups. So I have some questions I'd like you to consider and hear from a few people the answer to each of these questions. What have you learned about yourself in relationship to polarization today? So that's the first question. So just take a moment and think about it. What have you learned about yourself in relationship to polarization today? And I'll go first. And for me, it's a very humbling experience to be a NVC trainer and to be like the model for compassion and blah, blah, blah. And to just see how much of this domination system lives inside of me and how I feed polarization within me through my consumption of media and how I live the opposite of the zero step sometimes. I just get into these modes of convincing. And it's just embarrassing to admit, and it's actually painful to realize while it's happening, and to just feel a little out of control when I'm in the midst of a polarizing discussion. So I do everything in my power. That's another thing I learned. I do everything in my power to avoid them. So that's a little bit about what I learned so far today. And what have you learned? Who would be willing to share? Yeah, Barbara?
Yeah, I would say I learned something similar to you, Jim, is that I want to run from the conflict. I don't want to bridge it. It's easier to avoid the issue and the person than it seems easier to avoid rather than creating a connection. It's just easier. Okay, I don't have to deal with them.
Yeah.
And yet, I don't think that's helpful.
Yeah. And yet there's needs behind that, right? I'm guessing for you, you avoid these confrontations because you really value peace and harmony. Is that right?
I suppose so. Yes.
Yeah. And yet there's something hungry in you about connection that remains. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Somebody else? Especially new voices. All voices are welcome, but if I haven't heard your voice yet, I'd love to hear what's alive in you. Beth.
Yeah, I like to think that I'm above things a lot of time. That's the ego for you. But in studying polarization, I have to admit, I have an opinion. I've heard people say opinions are a lot, like noses. Everybody has one, and yeah, I have an opinion, and I hate it. I hate that I like to point my finger at them, right? And say, they look at them, they're being polarizing. But I am part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So really important for you to start taking responsibility for your part in it and to see that in a way, what other people are doing are a mirror of your own behaviors. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Juliana.
What I realized is, and I have been realizing, is that I I do have my opinions, I do have my perspectives, but that is my way, okay, of thinking, of doing things. And it may not be the way, the truth. It's just my truth. So I am now learning to be open to diverse perspectives and just trying to hear them and understand them, even though I don't agree with them, maybe sometimes in my heart, with the strategies. Okay. And looking for the needs underneath, which are always universal, really, mostly. And a second thing is I literally have to pinch myself, when I am in a conflict situation, and remind myself, do not go to what I did and you did and what you said and I said and what I did wrong and you did wrong. No, just try to stay with focus on that may come up, but focus, let the focus, my focus, at least I can only take responsibility for my action. Let my focus be on what do you need? What do I need? And, and what do we all need? What do all human beings need? And if I can stay in that space, I can bring much more sense and calm and peace within myself and in the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliana.
Ah.
Marina, what did you learn?
I learned that truth is a big value for me. I tried to understand that the other person too would value truth, but I don't understand why, in the face of a blatant lie that's evident in this political situation, that she, it's a friend of mine in the US, I'm in Canada, that she would still believe that and hold on to it. So I learned that I still want connection with her, and the way for me is to avoid talking about politics. See, everybody knows that we can see this person telling a lie, and then when she doesn't see it, I don't know what to do. So that's why I realized that the truth is too important for me. So I try to keep connection with her by not talking about it.
Yeah. It's so confusing for you about how you might have a different observational experience than the other person has. And you're choosing the strategy of I'm just not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like the advice that's common in the United States anyway is you don't talk about religion or politics at Thanksgiving or other family gatherings. And that's in the interest of harmony and sustaining some level of connection. But again, it comes at the cost of some kind of depth or a deepening understanding.
It's changed our relationship a lot.
Yeah.
We have to avoid what's a deep personal like or a personal sharing. We have to leave that aside and talk about things that are less important to us. Yeah. So it's a big cost, and that's the best I can do. I tried asking her why and understanding where she's coming from and but it eludes me, so that I have to leave it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for your honesty. I'm really touched, and it's very resonant for some of my painful conversations I had during the early days of the pandemic with friends. And I'm so grateful for one friend who happens to be an NVC trainer, and we hung in there. It took us a while to get there, but he basically proposed a strategy for us that really supported deep listening. And it's something that Jori and I used to do in our relationship, and something that we used to suggest to our clients, and something that might work for you all to try is just 5 minutes of speaking, 5 minutes of listening. And just this very kind of strict turn taking. And when you're speaking, you may choose to reflect, or you may choose not to reflect. You may just choose to stick with your honesty, but it's very, just one person talks, one person listens, no interrupting, just this very kind of strict strategy. And we managed to evolve that strategy into a much more deeper flowing connection. It just took us, 20 minutes or so to finally realize our 0 step. And so I'm very grateful for my friend for suggesting that particular strategy and reminding me of it, and that we tried it and it really worked. It was very healing. Sally?
Hi, thanks. That was helpful, that strategy that you just mentioned. And I'm going to write that down, use that when I can. I was just going to talk about how today I was in a community that was very different from myself in many ways, but there were some things that were the same about us. And I focused on those throughout the day, and that got me through. I gave up my authenticity, but I still, because I wanted connection, and I really felt as though they were more like me than not like me, that they were more the same than they were different. And so that's what helped with the connection. And that's what I wanted to.
Boy, that really resonates for me. I have a guy that comes to work for us at our house. He's like our our handyman. And when he started working for us, I could overhear him talking to the other workers and so forth. And it became very, very clear that he had pretty much the opposite politics as I did. And but I really value his work. And so I made this kind of choice that other people are talking about. I'm just not going to talk about it with him. And it ended up that we still never have talked about it, and may never talk about it other than indirectly. He knows about NVC, and he's seen my book and so forth. And I've actually done a little mediation between him and his business partner, which he seemed to get something out of. And but in a way, we have become not in a way. The reality is we love each other. We went and had a social event. We went to a ukulele concert last Sunday. He brought his baby and his wife, and we just hung out for more than 2 hours, enjoying something together in the same way that you're talking about. And I can talk about politics with, I have a weekly call, for example, with River. If something's alive about polarity or politics with me, I really trust that River can hold me and listen to me. And so my handyman, he doesn't need to hear my stuff. I don't need to try to convince him to change his vote. It wouldn't even matter in Hawaii anyway. We're not exactly a politically diverse state. And so I imagine he feels lonely here. And so, but we just found other ways to connect rather than trying to convince each other. I've been down that road. It's not much fun. Anybody else want to share what you've learned about yourself? Yeah, go ahead, Tanya.
I don't know that I've been thinking about this since Friday anyway. So you kind of tipped your hand. But I think there are two parts. One is the human beings, that we're the human beings and we live on this planet. And as far as I know, this is the only populated planet in the solar system, and for many, many light years around. And so, and we are all, if we go back something like 65,000 years, we're all the same family. So there's the human being part of it. But I think that there's, I think, Cecilia touched on it. There are real consequences for some of the strategies that people have in the world. And there's real consequences to systems of domination. So there's two parts of this. One is, am I going to spend my time in opposition? Am I going to spend my time talking and arguing with people who disagree with me? Or am I going to spend my time or suppressing my authenticity? It might be, and it was what is what I think it was Marina said. Or am I just going to choose who I'm going to talk to? And am I going to talk to the people that I agree with and motivate them to do the life-serving work that they want to do, but need support to doing? And that's kind of my position on this. And it still is my position. And also to be aware of the traumatic experiences of other people and how powerful they are in running your amygdala can run your prefrontal cortex. I mean, and so really pay attention to the traumatic experiences that people are exposing, and working on not pulling the tripwires. And if I do, to be really honest about what happened and not gaslight the other person.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it.
Thank you. You know, what I'm learning from what you just shared is how, like when I think of my, excuse me, my polarizing conversations, I shifted my focus to what was wrong. And rather than to keep my focus on what would make life more wonderful. And so that can be not only in terms of the topic of what I might want to talk about with somebody, but also about who I want to talk about what with. And I want to save my energy for creating collaborators whenever I can. It doesn't mean that I want to give up and become a doormat for other people's belief systems. So if there isn't a direct impact that I'm witnessing, I want to be brave enough to speak up and say, hey, wait a minute, that joke's a little over the line for me. And let me tell you why. I feel, tell them what my feelings and my needs are and how I want to respect. I want a sense of respect and dignity for all people, or whatever it is. So I really want to develop those kinds of skills to speak up for that authenticity, and then a clear and present request. What did you hear was important to me? Or how do you feel when you hear me say that, and so forth. So we can use these skills to navigate those uncomfortable moments. But please don't give up your needs. Please speak up for them. Cecilia.
Yeah, so I just quick share, I think where I'm seeing myself in my practice. So with all this, I mean, there are family members I want to have connection, and on and off we end up in these kind of polarized topics. And I'm saying to myself, okay, I know NVC, this person doesn't know NVC, I can get empathy elsewhere, I'm just going to give empathy. So then the person is going on and I say, oh, so you really value that. So that's really important for you. And the person is like, yeah, don't you think that's the right thing to do? Isn't that right? So it's, for me, the challenge is, even though I'm bringing the attention to needs, I'm being invited into disagreement, and I don't want to go there. I just want to give you empathy and validate that's who you are. I'm validated for myself. I don't need that person specifically validation. I want the connection. But it's really hard because and it's not just this one person. I think it's the way that we're educated, so we're being invited into the right or wrong, and I'm like, now what do I do with that? So I'm trying to sort that out.
Thank you, Cecilia. Yeah, I just love the image of making it okay to be in the middle, of not fully understanding something, of being okay with uncertainty about my understanding, or uncertainty about what to do next. That making space for feeling uncertain, that's an okay place to be. Jeannie?
Thanks, Jim. I put my hand up after you talked about, well, I'm in Hawaii and my persuading this one person to vote differently wouldn't make a difference. And I thought, I'm in Wisconsin. And you turn to River, and I just, when you have questions, and I notice River's in Philadelphia. And so I was wondering if River would be willing to talk for a minute about navigating some of these difficulties, if that would be cool.
Thanks for the request. River, how do you feel about sharing your experience?
Well, I feel like I'm always willing to say something. I'm not sure what to say here. I mean, for me, the best I can do, I've gotten simpler as I've practiced. That when I have a sense of openness in my heart, my hand goes like this. I have a sense of openness, and that's a signal that I'm in giraffe land or at Cyril. And when I have a sense of urgency or closeness, I feel like I'm in jackal land. And I want to keep my mouth shut when I feel constriction, closeness, urgency. And I like to open my mouth when I have a sense of openness and trust that that's going to be the most effective way to hold everybody's needs with care.
How does that land for you, Jeannie?
Very, very well. And what I guess, I mean, this whole exercise today just reminds me what a long way I have to go in order to integrate NVC into multiple areas of my life. But so I'm looking forward to being able to express my authenticity in that sort of open way, you know, setting the stage so that it's welcome, that my authenticity and self-expression is welcome.
Yeah.
And I have a long way to go. Thank you so much, River. Thank you.
I don't know if we'll have time for all the questions I had hoped to answer. I just love these answers so much. But I want to hear just a few answers to the question, what do you celebrate about today, about our time together today? And the reason that I asked this question is because, as we talked about last week, gratitude is a foundational skill for being able to navigate polarity and to support ourselves in resilience. And so, what are you celebrating about yourself in terms of what you've learned today and what you've learned over your lifetime that are preparing you for the next moments as we go through whatever we're going to be going through over the next few weeks? What are you celebrating about you? Carlos, I see such a big smile on your face. I really wonder if you'd be willing to share what's behind your smile.
Well, I think your comment was a little ominous. That's what brought the smile to my face. I'm a little embarrassed now. That was it. I just, like you, I am holding tight to my seat, you know, for tomorrow and the coming weeks, with fear and apprehension, concern. Yeah, that's why I smiled.
Thank you for letting me know. And I'm taking that as a celebration of feelings awareness, that you're really aware of what you're feeling and you're making space to feel those feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's true. Thank you, Jim.
Sam?
Thank you, Jim. Really appreciating this, the breakout session. It was really helpful to be in community and speak and share and reflect and empathize, really taking that away. And, you know, instead of just asking that the person wants empathy, just reflecting and giving empathy, sometimes just maybe just the antidote that we all really, really long for. I'm taking your quote away, being okay to be in the uncertainty of the middle of it, in the middle of it. That's really something I'm really just breathing into and embracing. So as difficult as that may be for me, I kind of like grew up in the culture and family of origin and school systems of right and wrong, and trying to unpack that still continuously. It's been an interesting journey to say the least. And celebrating also community like this, even though it's way past my bedtime. I'm really happy to be here and met my needs for community and learning. And I'm really grateful. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming, Sam. And Dean.
Hi, I'm celebrating further development of equanimity for these situations, and also celebrating the building of the skill of being able to bring compassion to these situations. And that has been something that's been very helpful for me since, you know, really facing a lot of polarized situations during COVID, and now having a very different way of experiencing those situations.
Thank you, Dean. And we'll finish up with Jean.
Thank you. I'm celebrating finding this community, being here tonight, finding a lot of different reflections on issues that I struggle with, and it feels very supportive, and I love the exposure to all the different ideas and the thoughts. It feels great.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. The other two questions that you can consider for homework, and by the way, I really encourage you all to read some of these things in the chat. My voice is giving out, so I'm not going to read them, but the two questions are, what are you mourning? And what next steps are you willing to take as you continue to learn about polarization? And we'll continue. Our next step will be, we'll meet again next week at the same time. And we'll talk about dialogue in the face of celebration and mourning. Because whenever anything happens in the world, like let's take the World Series as a safer example than the election. Everybody in LA, or who is an LA fan, is just really full of celebration about the outcome of that World Series. Everybody who was a Yankee fan, they're in deep mourning. Well, how do we talk with one another when maybe we're at the opposite end of that spectrum, where we're celebrating and the other person is mourning, or we're mourning and the other person is celebrating? So we'll actually do some dialogue practice, using some of these basic NVC practices to navigate the giving. The ultimate, one of the ultimate gifts that we can give is our honesty and our empathy. So we'll practice next week, giving and receiving honesty and empathy with some specific strategies that then you can take home with you and try in your family as we move towards whatever happens next. So that's it for me today. Jori sends her love. She just wasn't quite feeling up to coming today, but hopefully she'll be back next week. Thanks, Ali, for being here to support us. Thank you all for coming. And please do whatever you can to transcend the polarities in your life as we keep going. I'll go and open up the after party. Let me put the link in because Ali probably doesn't have it. So after the class, we have a after party for people who just don't feel quite done yet. So if you want to go to a different Zoom room and hang out for a while, you can do that. I'll put it into the chat. Aloha, everybody.